Hey, what's going on, everybody? Backyard Chicken Bro coming at you with an episode on chickens and winter planning. Now that we're in the great state of Wisconsin, obviously winter is in full swing, and I wanted to go over a couple of finer points at how to take care of your birds in the cold months. Like I said in a couple of earlier episodes, the average body temperature of a chicken is actually 107 degrees Fahrenheit, and because of that, they're actually very, very winter hardy. Some breeds more than others, kind of depending on plumage and heritage and that kind of thing, but most chickens are just fine in the winter months. In fact, I wouldn't even begin to worry about any kind of heat source unless it drops below 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Biggest things to take into consideration during the winter months are avoiding frostbite. Frostbite for chickens is mostly a factor of two things. One, moisture, and two, wind and or severe cold temperatures. Things you're going to want to look at more often are the combs of the chickens and their legs. Typically the combs will show signs of these little black spots, which is frostbite first, because chickens will actually pull blood flow from their outer extremities, like their comb and their legs, into their main torso to keep themselves warmer during the cold months. So regular inspection of combs during cold months and legs, just to make sure they're doing all right. And then obviously their habitat, wherever they're staying, whether it's a coop or anything else, you want to maintain it being as dry as possible, which is why ventilation is so important, both during the cold months and the warm months. So you don't want anything to get too wet. You can see most of my birds right now are just kind of hanging out underneath the coop itself, because it is actually misting a little bit, so they're staying dry, keeping their feet dry. But you can see inside the coop there are two heat sources, and with a light. Main point I'm going to put out is there's that small, you can see the small white cube on the base of the light. That's what's called a thermal cube. So there's the wall-mounted heat source is a radiant heat source, which is a nice option because it's way safer as far as making sure you're not actually going to start a fire inside of a coop. And then the heat lamp is just a secondary option I keep in there in the event it gets really, really cold outside. And two heat sources are necessary to keep the internal temperature of the coop slightly above freezing. The thermal cube turns the heat source on if the temperature within the coop drops below 25 degrees Fahrenheit, and it shuts the heat source off automatically if the temperature gets above 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So just about the right range you want to keep it. You don't want them to be, Miami on the beach, 80 degrees inside the coop, because the average chicken will actually produce about 10 watts of heat per chicken. So in my case, because my coop is sized for a dozen birds times 10, it's 120 watts of heat they're going to put out without any external heat source. So if the temperature actually doesn't drop below 10 degrees outside, they'll keep the interior of my chicken coop when they're in there overnight at about 40 degrees Fahrenheit just by themselves. Keep that in mind. Chickens will increase food intake during the cold months because they'll use larger consumption of food to keep themselves warmer. So you will see your feed requirements go up. I don't put anything extra in their feed during the warm months. I just make sure that the feeders staying at least half full. And I do clear some paths outside just so they can keep foraging off of the grass, eating bugs and that kind of thing. You can see a path goes around the yard. You don't have to get extravagant and making some chicken playground, but I just make sure they got enough room to roam around, stretch their legs, get some exercise, and still be able to forage outside, so they get that natural food source like they would during any other part of the year. So that's pretty much it. It's not complicated. They're actually very, very winter hardy. One thing I've noticed more and more, and it seems like ever since I got chickens, people like to tag me on social media with these chickens wearing sweaters. Not a good idea, unless your chickens have some type of ailment where they've lost plumage or feathers, because their natural way of keeping themselves warm is trapping air in between their body and their feathers, and they'll maintain that air pocket and just warm that air around them. So you don't need to put chickens in sweaters. Just throwing that out there. Other than that, keep your chicken game strong. I'll check y'all later.